All right, ready to dive into a story. A chilling one.
Oh, absolutely. Always up for a good deep dive, especially one this complex.
This one's the doozy. Aileen Wuornos. Think you've heard the name.
Definitely rings a bell. The damsel of death, right?
Yeah, that's her. But we're going beyond the headlines, beyond the movie even. Trying to understand her, not just the crimes.
Peeling back the layers, always more to it than meets the eye, isn't there?
Exactly. So, Aileen Wuornos, often labeled a monster, but was she born that way? Or did life kind of make her that way?
Nature versus nurture, that's the question, isn't it? And in this case, nurture dealt a pretty brutal hand.
Yeah, talk about a rough start. Abandoned before she even turned 4, raised by her grandparents.
And not exactly a stable home life. Alcoholic, allegedly abusive. Can you imagine growing up in that kind of environment?
Tough to even think about. That leaves a mark, you know?
Absolutely. And the trauma didn't end there. 11 years old, and she's already engaging in survival sex.
Trading whatever she could for food, cigarettes, just to survive. It's heartbreaking.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it, about the level of desperation. A child fending for herself.
The world failed her early.
It did. And that trauma, it manifested in other ways, too. As she got older, the run-ins with the law started.
Oh, yeah. The rap sheet's pretty long. DUI, disorderly conduct.
Assault, even firing a gun from a moving vehicle. This wasn't just youthful indiscretion, it was more than that.
A sign of what was to come.
You could say that a deep-seated rage, impulsivity, it all played a role.
Even had a short marriage, right? Didn't last long.
To Louis Fell, a wealthy yacht club president, 9 weeks. Couldn't escape the cycle.
Violence, instability, just kept going. That same year, her brother died, left her with a life insurance payout.
Squandered it pretty quickly.
And then the suicide attempt. Shot herself in the stomach.
Desperation, hopelessness, it's all there.
Didn't stop there, though. The downward spiral continued. More arrests, robbery, car theft, you name it.
Trapped. Like she didn't belong in any world but this one.
And then she meets Tyria Moore. 1986. That's a pivotal moment, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Met in a Daytona Beach gay bar. Aileen described it as love beyond imaginable.
Intense.
They moved in together pretty fast. Aileen was still working the streets to support them both. Became very dependent on Tyria.
Codependent, right?
Many experts think that relationship played a big role in what came next.
So we've got trauma, poverty, a dangerous lifestyle, and this intense, maybe unstable love affair.
And that's where the murders begin.
The murders, let's not just list them off. Let's really look at the victims, see if there's a pattern. Richard Mallory.
51 years old, electronics store owner.
Found shot to death.
Yeah.
Body abandoned. First victim. What did we learn from this one?
Well, Mallory's case, like the others, raises a lot of questions. Was it rage, a robbery gone wrong, something more planned out?
They were all middle-aged men. Shot to death.
Similar circumstances. Suggests a pattern for sure.
And it didn't stop there. 6 more men, same kind of profile. All over Florida, each one a life cut short, a family left grieving.
David Spears, a construction worker. Charles Carskadden, part-time rodeo worker. Troy Burris, selling sausages.
Charles Humphreys, retired Air Force major.
Walter Antonio, trucker, reserve police officer.
And then Peter Seams, retired merchant seaman, disappeared. His car turned up, but nobody.
Never officially linked to Aileen, but it added to the fear. Was she getting bolder, more careful? Nobody knew.
The body count was rising, everybody wondering who'd be next, and the cops were closing in. Aileen Wuornos was running out of time.
The media was having a field day, weren't they? The damsel of death? Catchy, but kinda.
Sensationalized.
Yeah, a bit. It's like we're more shocked when a woman commits these kinds of crimes.
Like it goes against some deep-seated stereotype.
Exactly, but stereotypes don't solve crimes. Good police work does.
And in this case, it did. Witnesses putting the pieces together, seeing Aileen and Tyria abandoning Peter Seams's car.
Right, after that accident. And then Aileen pawning stuff that belonged to the victims. Not very subtle.
And her fingerprints. Match on Seam's car. Game over.
They arrested her at a biker bar in Florida, January 9th, 1991.
And Tyria.
Found her the next day. And that's where things get even more messy.
Because she turned on Aileen, didn't she?
Flipped. Cut a deal for immunity. Even made those recorded phone calls, urging Aileen to confess.
Betrayal. Cold.
Yeah.
Shakespearean, almost.
Yeah.
And 3 days after the arrest, Aileen confessed.
Said it was self-defense. All those men, she claimed they'd raped her or tried to, while she was working.
Suddenly the narrative shifts. She's not just a killer, but a victim, fighting back.
But was it true?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because later, she'd changed her story. Multiple times.
Sometimes she said it was about the money. Other times, back to the self-defense claim. Which one was it?
That's what makes this case so fascinating and so frustrating. Was she playing the system or just lost?
The trial for Richard Mallory's murder started January 92. Prosecution had a mountain of evidence.
Her past, her criminal record, witnesses who placed her with the victims.
I even used the Williams rule. Brought in evidence from the other murders to establish a pattern.
Right.
The defense, though, they focused on her mental state.
Saying she wasn't in her right mind when she did it.
They brought in psychiatrists, borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder.
Heavy stuff.
Right.
How did that fit into their strategy?
They argued that those diagnoses, plus the trauma, all that abuse she suffered, it made her do it.
Or at least contributed to it, like she wasn't fully in control.
Right. Trying to make the jury see her as a damaged person, not a monster.
Humanize her.
Exactly. And they tried to back up that self-defense claim. Pointed out that Mallory, the first victim, had a prior conviction.
For attempted rape. So maybe he did attack her and she just snapped.
The judge didn't allow it, said it wasn't relevant to this case.
Big blow to the defense.
Definitely. Hard to argue self-defense when you can't show a pattern.
So what happened? What'd the jury say?
Guilty. First-degree murder. 2 hours of deliberation.
Wow.
4 days later, the sentence. Death. The prosecution's case was strong, but you also have to wonder, did the jury struggle with the idea of a woman capable of this?
That she could be both victim and perpetrator.
Possibly. But remember, this was just the first trial. She still had 6 more to go.
6 more men. 6 more families.
And facing all that, Aileen decided to change her plea to no contest for Humphreys, Burris, and Spears.
Why?
She said she wanted to get right with God.
Heavy words. Did she explain what she meant?
She did. She still insisted she'd killed Mallory in self-defense, said he'd raped her, but the other 3.
Not so clear-cut.
She admitted they hadn't actually attacked her yet, just began to start to... What does that even mean?
Self-defense or cold-blooded? It's getting harder to tell.
The prosecution definitely saw it as an admission, kept pushing for the death penalty.
And she kept pleading guilty or no contest. Karskaden, Antonio. They never found his body, so no charges there.
6 death sentences. Imagine that weight hanging over you.
I can't. What was it like for her on death row?
Appeals. Accusations. Moments where she seemed almost lucid. It was a roller coaster.
Did she ever say she was sorry? Give a straight answer about why she'd done it.
That's the thing about Aileen Wuornos. Always a mystery. Sometimes she stuck to that self-defense story. Said all the men had attacked her.
Even wrote in a petition, I killed those men, robbed them as cold as ice, and I'd do it again. Chilling.
But then other times, she'd say it was for the money, to rob them, get rid of witnesses. Admitted it to a filmmaker off camera.
2 completely different stories.
And even said she couldn't take death row anymore, just wanted to die. So which one is true?
Was she a monster? A victim? Both? I don't know.
The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. We see this horrific cycle of abuse, trauma, but then these calculated, brutal acts.
7 lives lost, families destroyed, and this woman at the center of it all.
Tragic on so many levels.
You mentioned something before about how female serial killers get more attention. Do you think that's true for Aileen? Did it affect how she was treated?
It's a tough one. On the one hand, yeah, women who kill like this are rare, so the media goes nuts, the nicknames, the focus on her looks.
Instead of the facts.
Right, and that distorts things. But then again, some people argue her gender might have worked against her.
How?
Because her abuse, the trauma, it was downplayed. Like they couldn't believe a woman could be both a victim and a perpetrator of violence.
Like if she'd been a man who killed women, they'd have taken those self-defense claims more seriously.
It's a theory, a controversial one.
Yeah.
But it makes you think, how does gender affect how we see crime? How we judge it?
Adds another layer to this already complicated story. It's not just about murder, it's about...
Societal inequalities.
Exactly. Trauma. Justice. Compassion. Big stuff.
And as those appeals started running out, she did something unexpected. Filed a petition.
To what? Appeal even more.
The opposite. To dismiss her lawyers, drop all the appeals. Basically, she chose to speed up her own execution.
Whoa. That's heavy. Why would she do that if she was fighting so hard before?
In the petition, she said she was tired of everyone saying she was crazy, said she'd been evaluated over and over, and she was competent, sane, and telling the truth. And get this, she wrote, I am one who seriously hates human life and would kill again. Wow. Almost like she was embracing it.
Maybe. Wanted to control the narrative, even if it meant ending her own life.
Hard to wrap your head around that.
It is. Her lawyers were worried, of course, questioned if she was really competent to make that kind of decision.
What happened?
They brought in psychiatrists, a whole panel, to evaluate her. They said she was competent, could make her own choices.
So that was it then. No more appeals.
Right. And as her execution date got closer, things got weird.
Weird.
Weird how? She started accusing the prison staff of all sorts of things, said they were messing with her food, torturing her.
Torturing her.
How psychologically, she said, whether it was true or not.
Yeah.
It just shows how messed up the whole situation was.
Even facing death, she felt like a victim.
Yeah. It's all just
Yeah.
sad. And then, of course, there's that last statement, the one everyone remembers.
The one and only, October 9th, 2002, right before the lethal injection. She said, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the rock and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like a movie. Big mothership and all, I'll be back. I'll be back."
I've heard that quote a million times, but it still doesn't make sense. What was she talking about?
Your guess is as good as mine. Some people say it was just rambling, her mind going. Others think there was a message in there somewhere.
The defiant one.
Yeah, like she was refusing to be silenced, even in death. Who knows?
Aileen Wuornos, the ultimate enigma. So here we are, end of the deep dive. What do we take away from all this? What's her legacy?
I think it shows us that sometimes there are no easy answers. Good and evil, they're not always so clear-cut.
She was a victim.
And a perpetrator.
And everything in between. Her story makes us confront some ugly truths about abuse, about trauma, about how society fails people.
We can't just label her a monster and move on. It's more complicated than that. Way more. And maybe that's the point. To make us think, to make us uncomfortable.
Right.
Because that's how we learn, right?
Right. So, folks, there you have it. The story of Aileen Wuornos. Disturbing, tragic, and thought-provoking, to say the least. What do you think?
It's